السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على محمد النبي الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم واجعلنا منهم آمين. لك الحمد يا ربي كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. الحمد لله حمد الشاكرين، الحمد لله على كل حال، ونعوذ بالله من حال أهل النار. Inshallah, this evening we'll discuss the current events in Gaza, the so-called phase 1, which is supposed to be followed by phase 2. Some of you who follow the news might have today start thinking that everything is falling apart because the Zionists have bombed many places in Gaza and more than 50 have attained Shahada other than those who injured. So what is the story and what is really happening? As a background, it looks like for us from last Monday when Trump made it to Palestine and then to Egypt, that this event have taken place a year ago. It's difficult to see that this whole thing is still within a week. But as some of you are aware, that Trump have Trump has presented a plan which was presented to the Arab and Muslim leaders at the UN, and they signed on it. And then Netanyahu came 2 days later, gave the talk, if you remember, on a Friday, and the bulk of the people left the UN chamber, except very few among them, unfortunately, is the whole United Arab Emirates diplomatic corps was there, where even the foreign minister met with Netanyahu afterward, which really opens many questions: who is working with who and who is conspiring against who. Then Netanyahu went and had a meeting, himself and his right-hand man, Dermer. They met with Witkoff and with Jared Kushner, and the plan was modified. It was modified so that the Palestinian Authority will not have a role in running Gaza. It was modified where the maps for the withdrawal were changed, and it also was modified in other aspects that the Muslim leaders say this is not the plan that we have agreed on. Another aspect of it is the original plan says that Hamas will put down their weapons, and Netanyahu changed it that they will be disarmed. Anyway, so the plan was presented by President Trump, and Hamas have given an answer after consulting with Turkey, Qatar, and the Egyptians. Basically, their answer was, we are ready to release all the hostages, the alive ones, and it was specifically mentioned that the dead ones may take time. This was part of the original statement. But they did not say we accepted the plan. And they did not say we rejected the plan. So basically it was a very, very clever answer, and I suspect that it was the Turkish diplomats who really coined this answer, because Turkey was behind what was done and what's to be followed. And just like in Syria, where Turkey is running the show, it looks like now the Turkey government is playing a major role in advising Hamas on this, especially that they have the ear of President Trump. So the answer was very, very clever. They did not say we reject the plan. All what they said is that we are ready to release the hostages, the live ones, and those who are deceased, their bodies, of course, given the circumstances that may take time, the deceased one. But they said the second part of the plan, it's not up to us. This needs to be decided by the Palestinian people. So Trump came out and saying that Hamas have accepted my plan. Netanyahu was expecting that Trump will come and say Hamas rejected the plan, therefore the war will continue. And the Zionists were stunned to see Trump publicly saying Hamas have accepted the plan. Actually, they did not. They said, we are ready to release the hostages, but the rest of the plan need to be discussed. We do not have a mandate from the Palestinian people to discuss these issues, that you bring non-Muslims to rule Gaza, and you bring troops, from different parts of the world to be stationed in Gaza, and so on and so forth. Said, this is not our subject. We can discuss the hostages, we can discuss bringing food and supplies to Gaza, we can discuss opening Rafah and Karm Abu Salim and other entrances to Gaza, but the other parts of the plan is beyond us. Because really, it was a disaster that for the Muslims to bring back a war criminal, Tony Blair, a war criminal who caused hundreds of thousands of deaths in Iraq by aligning himself with President Bush, saying that there are weapons of mass destruction. To bring him to rule Gaza with President Trump, of course, President Trump barely can rule the US. I mean, we have the government shut down, and this is the third week coming. By Monday, we'll have 3 weeks. The US government shut down. So, it's obvious Trump does not have time to rule Gaza. So that was, as I said, a very clever answer. So Trump said the war should stop, and by Monday, the hostages will be released. And Trump announced that he's going to the Knesset to give a speech, and he's gathering with 20 other leaders, world leaders, in Cairo, in Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh, and he will be signing this agreement with the Turkey President Erdogan and the Qatar Emir, and also with the Egyptian Sisi. And the world looked around, waiting, and indeed, the hostages were released on Monday. Trump gave a talk in the Knesset, and for those who did hear the introduction, Netanyahu talked for about an hour praising Trump. He almost said that he's a prophet of Bani Israel. He almost got to that point. I mean, he kept praising him, short of that he's a prophet of Bani Israel. I'm not sure even if he was a prophet, he would say what he said about him. And then Trump gave a talk, and he realized that he needed to give something for Netanyahu. Because basically, the right-wing factions in the Israeli politics were stunned and shocked. I mean, think about it. Only as a month and a half ago, they were dividing Gaza. In fact, some of those settlers, some of those criminals went and start plotting and trying to divide Gaza between them. Who's going to have this and who's going to have this and who's going to have that. Smotrich even went to the extent of saying Gaza is a real estate bonanza. We're going to divide it with the Americans. And as we discussed a few weeks back when I came from Palestine, they actually, the army have reoccupied the West Bank in preparation for annexing the bulk of the West Bank except the major cities which have the major population. So Trump publicly came, again, I think this is the diplomacy of, again, Turkey, clearly saying, I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. So that was the first shock. And the second shock was, stop the war without Gazan leaves Gaza, as they were dreaming, without Hamas being defeated. I mean, they were dreaming that they're going to get to take over Gaza and the Hamasis will come raising their white flag and just surrendering, which really only dreams of the Zionists, because that was not coming. In fact, one of the major figures, an Israeli Jew who have participated in the Shalit agreement, which released Shalit and about 1,000 plus Palestinian prisoners, he said the dream of them surrendering is out of the question. He said, don't even think of it. It's not happening. So it's not just that they did not surrender. No, they came in full force and took over Gaza. Took over Gaza as if nothing happened. They came out from the tunnels and from wherever they were with their weapons and took over, again, control Gaza. Furthermore, they arrested some of the Israeli spies who were a group of murderers and drug dealers and so on and so forth that used to kidnap people for money and kill, working for the Zionists in Gaza. Gazans, those are Muslims, unfortunately, of Gaza. Some of them, realizing that some change is happening, they came through their families and asked for forgiveness. And they were forgiven. But the others who still work with the Zionists, they were able to capture them and execute them in public. Now, the disaster upon the Zionists came when Trump came publicly, this is publicly in front of the whole world, saying, I'm not worried about those being killed. Those are criminals. Those are murderers. Those are members of gangs. And they should be punished. I mean, not sure if he knew or not that those were Israeli spies. So there are 200 US troops in occupied Palestine right now, supposedly watching this agreement, and we start hearing statements that Hamas cannot do this. Then suddenly, President Trump came with 180 degrees other extreme, saying, if Hamas continue doing this, we gonna go in and kill them. We. So it looks like somebody after that told him, Mr. President, I mean, the MAGA people will be mad that if we are saying we Americans will gonna put troops in Gaza to fight Hamas. So he came for the third time saying, it's not we, somebody else will go and do the job. He also made another statement that one word from me will resume the war. Now remember, he had two different narrations of his achievement. In one narration, he said, I have stopped 500 years of war. And nobody knows what he's talking about. In another narration, he said, I stopped 3,000 years of war. And again, nobody knows what he's talking about. So when he came and said that I can, in one word, get the Israelis to start bombing Hamas, I said, wait a minute, I thought, you have stopped 3,000 years of war. So what is really happening with Trump is that there are two sides that are feeding him. On one side, Turkey and Qatar. On the other side, Netanyahu and company. So this was very, very clear today. I mean, this was really very, very clear today when the Israeli army said that there was an attack on them in Rafah. Remember, Rafah is still under the Zionist control. Now, there are different narrations of what had happened, and nothing is there for sure. What we know at the end of the day is a leader in the Israeli army of this Nahal group was killed, with another soldier who was killed, and 2 or 3 others were injured. And as a result, the Israelis bombed so many places in Gaza today that more than 45 people have attained Shahada other than those who are injured, by saying that Hamas have violated the agreement. Well, from day one, Katz, the defense minister, when Hamas said we're going to give you X number of dead hostages and then we will search for the rest, he said that's a violation. They have to give us all of them. Although there was text in the original agreement that it's going to take time. So this thing they have violated, this is not the first time they have said it. But this time they bombed from the north all the way to the south. And then Netanyahu came and said, all the entry points to Gaza will be closed. From now on, no assistance, no food, no nothing will come into Gaza until further notice. As you can imagine, within minutes, he got a call. And after the call, he announced that the food delivery will resume. And Ibn Ghaffir was really mad. He said, why? You already said we are not going to get these things. Well, again, Netanyahu from day one, he only moved in this direction with the big stick that Trump is carrying. And this stick came in today. He is in a position of really defeat. Even the Israeli media is saying that Netanyahu is looking for delivering a new narrative. Because remember, he was saying that the war will not stop until Trump's plan is implemented. What he means by Trump plan, the original plan, which called for the people of Gaza to be removed from Gaza, and Gaza became the Riviera of the Middle East. He said publicly more than once that the war will only stop when Trump's plan is implemented and the people of Gaza will leave it. In more than other occasions, we will only accept full defeat of Hamas and we have to finish them. So he has been saying these things all along. And now, well, nothing of that achieved. In fact, the agreement, the plans that Trump have put forward, saying the people of Gaza will stay in Gaza. Those who want to leave Gaza, they can leave and come back. That's part of the agreement. Those who want to go and visit Egypt or visit somewhere else, they can come back. This is not what Netanyahu has been promising, and this is not what the right-wing extremists have been waiting for in this regard. So it's very obvious to anyone who understands the reality of this war that this Zionist government will wait for any opportunity to break this agreement. Of course, they're going to blame Hamas and Tamas and Mamas and others, whoever. Today, even when they said that Hamas attacked, Hamas said, no, we did not attack. And they said, by the way, Rafah is under your control. We do not have control over Rafah. Rafah is under your control. So whatever have happened, if it was an explosives that was on the ground, or it was an attempt to rescue some people, or what have you, as I said, the narration, there are many narrations and there's nothing for sure. But what is for sure is that, as you have seen today, they will use any opportunity to resume the war and to get things their way. Why? It's not just now the issue of resuming the war. Because Monday, tomorrow, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, and Witkoff will go to meet with Netanyahu and company. Start talking about the second stage. Now, Gaza, in general, under the control of Hamas. So to come and say, okay, they need to disarm, or we will disarm them, or what have you. Okay, then who? You have 2.5 million or 2.3 million or 2.2 million people, whatever the number is. How are you going to leave this number of people who are without houses, without food, without supplies, basically depending totally on charitable organization and the UN? How are you going to leave all of this without a force there to control the law? How? Well, the Zionists do not care, because they want chaos in Gaza. They want people to start killing each other. And they want their own spies to be integrated in the order, the law order, or whoever going to be running Gaza. Look at this. When there was this agreement being worked out, the Shabak, which is the Israeli intelligence, this is the interior, the exterior is the Mossad, they want to take those Israeli spies and put them close to the border of Gaza under their protection. This is the Shabak, the Israeli intelligence. The army said, no way. We will not allow it. The army said, those are murderers, drug dealers. We cannot take them in because we have enough of them. We do not want more. For those who know, the organized crime and mafia inside Israel have big influence. You hear sometimes of big car explosion, and they said, this is not security related. What it is organized crime. I mean, you have 1.5 million Russians who came, and they have their own venues of making money and doing things that really outside of the law. So the army said, we do not need more of those people. And that's why some of them ended up being executed by Hamas. And then the American says we have to have a safe haven. Look the way they put it, for Gazans who do not or who fear Hamas. Basically, it's for Israeli spies. That's what it is. That's what it is. What's also strange, according to the Israeli media, is that Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates have contacted the American diplomats saying basically, what's going on? If Turkey and Qatar will have their own ways and seems that they have their influence, then Hamas will still be having its weapons. And Saudi and United Arab Emirates want Hamas to disarm. You see, for the last 2 years, we have been saying that the United Arab Emirates and the Saudis and the Egyptians are conspiring with the Israelis against Hamas. I mean, this is obvious for anyone who can see. So now they are saying there is too much influence of Turkey and Qatar in all of this. And indeed there is. Now, whether the failed attempt by the Zionists on bombing Qatar, that failed attempt against the Hamas leadership, have contributed to this, or the $500 million plane that was given as a gift to the president, or what have you, but that's a reality now, that Qatar and Turkey have big weight in what's going on. In fact, the Israeli media today had an article about a Turkish charitable group. I think it's called the IHH. They said this group, from the Israeli perspective, is a terrorist group. And the Israelis have banned them. They cannot do any work inside the West Bank or Gaza for many years. But they said now they are in Gaza, helping to clear the debris and to support the people of Gaza. Saying, how did they get to Gaza? It's through the Americans, who insist that they allow them to enter Gaza. Because of what? Because of the influence of Turkey and Qatar in this regard. So from this perspective, we say that the phase one was really a nightmare for Netanyahu and company. And knowing the mentality of the Zionists, they will not take it. They will try to use any opportunity. And we have seen it clearly today. Although Hamas said we have nothing to do with what happened in Rafah, Rafah is under the Israeli army still. They went and bombed Gaza from the north to the south, and they sent drones and other ways and means to terrorize the people of Gaza, as if the war did not end. It was shocking to the people of Gaza because they thought there's a ceasefire in this regard. And the size of this response, of course, it's understandable that Netanyahu wants to, get back lots of what he lost in terms of the control of the situation. Because the situation now is controlled from Washington, D.C., not from Jerusalem or Tel Aviv. And as we said, when the agreement took place and Trump announced that Hamas have accepted it, although they did not, we said that condolences are being received in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem and in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi and other places. Because the reality is that they are working with the Zionists against the people of Gaza and against Hamas. That is and should be clear. Now, where this thing is heading is really a big question mark. Because what's next? Now they are talking about trying to get some technocrats from Gaza to run the affairs of Gaza. As we explained, technocrats mean people who have the specialty in their field, but they do not belong to any party or organization. So basically they will not be among Hamas or Islamic Jihad or Fatah or the Popular Front or what have you. So this guy is an expert in finance. He will be responsible for finance. This person is an expert in the health care field. He will be Minister of Health. This person is an expert in water resources and what have you. He will be in charge of that department, and so on and so forth. So that's the plan that they are working on, getting those technocrats, Palestinians supposedly, to work, and having on top of them this a group that consists with Trump and Blair and some others. Now, Trump coming to the Middle East, he mentioned that we are not sure about Blair if the people will accept him, meaning the people of the Middle East. So that brought some doubts. And again, I think this is again the Turkish Qatar influence is making its way through the US administration. Now, as I said, where this thing is heading is total uncertain. Because even if you bring a government of technocrats, even if you bring this body that will oversee it, Trump and whoever, who gonna be controlling the street? Who gonna have the ability to put law and order in place in Gaza? There's talks that Egypt is training some people and other countries, and there was a talk also that Indonesia is offering 20,000 troops, and so on and so forth. And there are many countries, they claim, who are willing. Now, what are those troops' role will be in Gaza? Are they coming to protect the Muslims of Gaza? Or are they coming to be the tool for the Zionists to really have Gaza totally neutralized? And when you ask the resistance in Gaza to put down their arms, well, you have Israeli spies, Yasser Abu Shabab and his gang and other gangs, who have Israeli supplied weapons. So you want those people to put down their weapons, and you are arming your own spies to do what? Well, to control Gaza. And that the resistance will not go for this. What is really sad is to find the people of Abbas and Saudi media and beyond crying on those Israeli spies. Because basically, they were hoping, just like the Zionists, that those people will control Gaza as alternative to the resistance. And that will be very, very dangerous for Gaza, because the resistance will not lay down their arms without a clear plan to distinguish between defensive and offensive, and this thing could drag on and make things totally uncertain. Again, President Trump, the government is shut down by Monday to be 3 weeks. And for how long he can keep giving attention every day to what's happening in Gaza, since he already put his name in this. That's another open question. Now he wants to shift some attention with himself and Witkoff to Russia and Ukraine, and he's meeting with Putin in this regard. So where does this Gaza thing go? Again, what it seems is that the plan would not be implemented the way that it was envisioned for many reasons, because after all, it's impractical. And we talked about some of its aspects. But what is known is that the U.S. will insist on keeping the ceasefire. Unless something wild, out of the ordinary happens, the U.S. will insist the ceasefire continue. And they have forced it back today. You have seen the Israeli army, after the bombing, said, we will abide by the ceasefire. Well, again, this is the stick coming from Washington, D.C. We will open the entry points to Gaza and let assistance flow. Yes, they were saying that, oh, we're going to cut into it because of this and this and that, that those dead hostages. They have bombed 90% of the building, and some of those dead hostages are under those rubbles too. And they were asking for machinery. And the Zionists are saying no. Until you return all the hostages. And they are telling the world that, oh yeah, they can return them in one day. In this regard. And of course, we are not talking about bodies. I mean, in general, there will be bones. People who have been dead for 2 years in this regard. And you have seen some of them were kept in buildings, some of them were kept under the buildings and the tunnels and so on and so forth. So at least, we have a commitment from the U.S. that the ceasefire will continue no matter what. And the Bashar Bahbah, who is a Palestinian Republican close to the administration, in fact, he was the intermediary between the Trump administration and Hamas. Because actually what also drove the Zionists berserk, that there was meeting, at least one meeting, if not more, between the U.S. officials and Hamas. And who was the wasta between them, the intermediary, is Bashar Bahbah. I remember growing up in Palestine, Bashar Bahbah established a newspaper called Al-Fajr newspaper, and it was daily for many, many years. And then he left Palestine to the U.S. and became a businessman and became close to the Republican circles. He gave an interview today to Al Jazeera saying the ceasefire will continue and the administration will force Netanyahu and the Israeli government to stick to the ceasefire. For the sake of time, I only will add that there's a talk now about investigating October 7. And the government, of course, have resisted a commission to investigate October 7 because it's going to show that Netanyahu and company did not do what they were supposed to do, and they were aware of some movements that led to October 7 and so on and so forth. So now they are trying to expand the mandate that this group would also look at the Supreme Court and look at how the demonstration against the government, because they want to change the laws, how this affected October 7, which again says that they will just water down this whole thing. Because if it went straight, it will just lead to Netanyahu resigning and ending up in jail. Just like what happened in 1973 when Golda Meir had to resign because of negligence. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring the khair and the good for the ummah and protect the Muslims from all the conspiracies against them. Allahumma ameen. And we will see you inshallah next Sunday after Salatul Isha. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.